Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. It took 17 days from when Joe Biden was declared the winner of the presidential election by all of the major press outlets and networks. 17 days of lies and absurd court challenges and tantrums, pressure on public officials. But today, finally, we got the first full day of the actual Biden transition. The incoming Biden administration now has access to the FBI to vet potential nominees and funding for salaries and travel and office space and the ability to communicate with outgoing appointees and, crucially, civil servants with information. Also a .gov website. Biden's also starting to get the president's daily briefing. This all should have happened 17 days ago, but at least it happened now. Here's what Biden told NBC News' Nightly News' anchor Lester Holt in an exclusive interview earlier today.
It's a slow start, but it's starting, and there's 2 months left to go, so I'm feeling good about the ability to be able to get up to speed, and I fully expect, based on what we've heard so far, we'll get full cooperation from each of the agencies in question.
Today, Biden formally unveiled some of his key picks for top positions, many of whom served in the Obama administration. There's a kind of sigh of relief. I think a lot of people are breathing now. I mean, this does seem to be over after weeks of the outgoing president waging war on the election's legitimacy and trying to do whatever he could to hang on to power, including embarking on a litigation strategy that conservative legal writer Walter Olson described as going down a hotel corridor, trying each door to see if any have been left unlocked. It seems like we are finally moving on. That said, Trump is, of course, still falsely claiming the election was stolen, as he will for the rest of his life. And Republicans today filed some last-minute lawsuits, again, to try to block the election certification in Wisconsin and Minnesota. But it does seem to finally be over. Today, the much-watched state of Pennsylvania officially certified Biden's win, as did Nevada, another state Trump had tried to contest, and so did Minnesota. Apparently, that last-minute lawsuit I just mentioned didn't quite do the job. And with all that has been happening, you're seeing some people start to say, look, the system works. The guardrails held, our democracy is fine.
This is a significant development, and I think it also kind of disproves a lot of things that people who've engaged in fever dreams about the president, holding on to power well after this election. Our republic is very strong, that its guardrails are very solid.
I think one thing to take away from this, Judy, is the fact that the guardrails of our system actually worked.
The good news here is that the institutions in American democracy have held up, the courts and all of the rest. And Joe Biden will be president, and this Trumpian effort to overturn democracy is not going to succeed. That's a really big deal.
So some of that is absolutely true. I mean, one takeaway here is that by and large, judges, particularly, no matter which president appointed them, really did have zero tolerance for these completely fanciful, ridiculous, baseless accusations from the Trump team, which properly got laughed out of court. And in that way, the system did hold. But take a step back to remember why we are where we are, right? For months leading up to the election, the entire Trump re-election strategy was predicated on the premise he would lose the popular vote. They knew that. And that any victory would be a narrow one in a few key swing states a la 2016. And they began putting in place a plan to basically declare a victory even if they narrowly lost in a key state or two. This was the groundwork laid with the constant casting of aspersions on the integrity of mail-in ballots and the tweeting about fraud, with the pre-election lawsuits to throw a kind of legal pall over certain categories of ballots, particularly ones that arrived after Election Day, in hopes the campaign could then go back into court after Election Day and try to get those votes thrown out if it was close. That might be decisive. And the Supreme Court kind of saying maybe come back, right? That was the plan. I mean, Republican legislators even refused to let key states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, count their mail-in votes early so that Trump could declare victory on election night, as he did. And the only problem with the plan, the biggest thing that stopped it, it wasn't really so much the institutions. It's just that Trump lost the election by too much to really pull it all off. And right now, with 98% of the vote counted, Biden's ahead in the popular vote by more than 6 million votes. That is likely to continue to go up. We still got a lot of votes in New York. Donald Trump has the biggest popular vote loss since 2008, even bigger than Mitt Romney's, the man that Trump is so fond of calling a loser. And remember, Biden won 306 electoral votes, giving him a good amount of breathing room beyond the necessary 270. In other words, it never came down to just a single state. And yet, even with those margins, We have seen the president convince a huge percentage of Americans that vote fraud was endemic. We've watched as he pressured, sometimes successfully, these random Republican functionaries to abdicate their responsibility to follow the law. Now, he wasn't that successful in the grand scheme of things. And there were Republican officials, many, the majority actually, who did do the right thing. Thank goodness. But I don't know, imagine the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia had been a complete hack or successfully bullied instead of a responsible civil servant. Or if the single Republican who voted to certify the results in Michigan, state Biden won overwhelmingly, the guy on the state canvassing board who departed with his Republican colleague voting to certify, if he'd been a hack. Or if a Trump-appointed judge in, say, Pennsylvania had got along with the scheme too. We could be in a very different place right now. That's just a handful of people who could have altered the trajectory. It didn't happen. But that's a flashing red warning sign. So here are two of my big takeaways. One, the Electoral College is a real problem. I mean, the margins are almost always going to be small in these contested states, certainly smaller than the national margin, and that makes them vulnerable to attack. Even if you take away all the hijinks, it's still a ticking time bomb. I mean, imagine the Democratic legitimacy crisis we'd be in if Trump had flipped 60,000 votes in the right states and was about to be inaugurated president having lost by 4 points and over 6 million votes. Back-to-back elections for the first time in American history. Not good. The other takeaway from this election is that the tolerance that the institutional Republican Party has for authoritarian and flatly anti-democratic politics just overturn the election. The tolerance is luckily lower than the worst case fears, but it's way higher than anyone should be comfortable with.